The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal. Light from distant stars filtered through the transparent walls, casting rainbow patterns on the floor. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated areas, each section designed for their specific needs. The Aquarians had their water-filled chambers. The silicon-based Christech sat on heated stone platforms. The gas-breathing Nebulans floated in their protective bubbles dot in the back corner. Almost forgotten, 3 humans sat quietly at a simple metal table. Ambassador Sarah Chun wore a plain gray uniform with no decorations except for a small earth pin on her collar. Her deputy, Marcus Torres, took notes on an old-fashioned tablet. The 3rd human, Dr. Emily Watson, studied a datapad showing shipping routes and supply statistics. They had been sitting there for 6 hours as the council debated the same issues they discussed every month: trade disputes, territorial claims, and military positioning. The humans rarely spoke during these sessions. When they did, their suggestions were usually ignored or postponed to future meetings. The Outer Rim territories are becoming more dangerous, Ambassador Chen said during a brief pause in the arguments. Our cargo ships report increased pirate attacks. We need better patrol coverage and early warning systems. The Zephyrian ambassador turned his crystalline head toward her. His species looked like living diamonds, beautiful but cold. Humans always worry about the small problems, he said in his ringing voice. Your people run supply ships and fix broken equipment. Leave the important security matters to those who understand warfare. Several other ambassadors made sounds of agreement. The massive Thraxian war chief leaned forward in his chair. His species stood 3 meters tall and was covered in thick armor-like skin. Humans are soft, he rumbled. Good for cleaning and maintenance work. But they know nothing about real fighting or strategy. Chum kept her face calm, but Torres noticed her hands tighten slightly. She had served on this council for 12 years. She had watched human proposals get dismissed again and again. Human warnings about problems were ignored until those problems became disasters. Then the other species would ask humans to fix the mess. While taking credit for the solutions, the debate continued without them. The Ultarians argued with the Draconians about mining rights. The Nebulans complained about shipping delays. The Christechs demanded better protection for their trade routes. All problems that humans had been quietly solving for years while getting little recognition. The hegemony fleet needs more supply stations, announced Admiral Kresh of the Military Council. His blue skin glowed with bioluminescent patterns that showed his rank. But we want them built with hegemony technology, not human modifications. Dr. Watson looked up from her datapad. The human modifications increase efficiency by 40%. Without them, you'll need twice as many stations to maintain the same supply flow. Kresh waved a dismissive hand. Human technology is basic. We prefer our own advanced systems. Chun had heard this argument many times before. The aliens always claimed their technology was superior, but they kept asking humans to maintain it. Human engineers were stationed at every major facility in the galaxy, supposedly doing simple repair work. In reality, they spent most of their time fixing design flaws and preventing system failures that the original builders never anticipated. The morning session ended with no real decisions made. As usual, all human proposals were tabled for further study. The other species filed out of the hall, talking loudly about their plans for lunch and afternoon meetings. The humans packed up their materials in silence. Same as always, Torres muttered as they walked toward their small office in the lower levels of the station. Patience, Chun replied, but her voice carried a note of tired frustration. We've been patient for 50 years, Watson said. Maybe it's time to try something different. Their office was cramped and poorly located compared to the grand chambers assigned to other species. But it had something the others lacked: a direct connection to the human communication network that spanned the galaxy. Chun activated the secure channel and sent a coded message to Earth and the major human colonies. Within hours, responses began arriving from across human space. Military commanders reported the same dismissive treatment from alien allies. Colonial governors described how their warnings about local problems were ignored until crisis hit. Engineers and technicians shared stories of fixing alien technology while being told their methods were inferior. The pattern was clear. Humans had become the galaxy's maintenance crew, the species that kept everything running while being treated as servants. They operated the supply lines that fed the major civilizations. They maintained the communication networks that connected distant worlds. They managed the shipping schedules that kept trade flowing. They provided the technical support that prevented countless disasters. But none of the other species saw this work as important. They only saw humans as useful for jobs that required patience and attention to detail. The kind of work that prestigious species considered beneath them. Chun read through the reports late into the night. Similar stories from every corner of human space. The same pattern of dismissal, condescension, and taken for granted service. She thought about her years of diplomatic service, trying to build understanding between humans and their galactic neighbors. All those careful words and patient explanations, hoping that someday the other species would see humans as equals. Maybe Watson was right. Maybe it was time for something different. The next morning brought another council session, another round of debates about problems that humans had been trying to solve for years. Chun sat quietly and listened as the Zephyrians complained about power grid failures on their colony worlds. The same failures that human engineers had warned about 6 months ago. "We need immediate technical assistance," the Zephyrian ambassador demanded. "Send your best repair teams." Chun stood up slowly. All eyes turned toward her, probably expecting another offer of human help with another thankless job. "No," she said simply. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Ambassadors looked confused. Had they misunderstood the translation? "I'm sorry?" the Zephyrian ambassador asked. "No," Chun repeated. "Humanity declines to provide assistance. We have our own priorities to consider." For the first time in anyone's memory, the great hall of the Galactic Council fell completely silent. 3 weeks after the incident in the council chambers, the first departures began. They started small and quiet, the way humans did everything else. A cargo ship here, a maintenance crew there. Most aliens barely noticed. The supply depot at Kepler Station processed its usual morning shipments. Crystic ore from the inner worlds, Aquarian bioproducts from the ocean planets, manufactured goods from a dozen different species. But Station Master Vesti, a methodical Altarian with gray skin and large black eyes, noticed something odd in his daily reports. "Where's the human cargo ship?" he asked his assistant. "The one that delivers medical supplies every Tuesday." The assistant checked the schedule display. No arrival logged. "Maybe they're running late." Vexti frowned. In 8 years of operation, human ships were never late. They arrived exactly on time, delivered exactly what was promised, and left without any fuss. It was one of the things he appreciated about working with humans. Even if they were considered a minor species, across the galaxy at Hegemony 4 Base 7, Admiral Kresh stood in his command center reviewing fleet status reports. His blue skin flickered with agitated light patterns as he studied the supply projections. "Sir," his aide approached carefully, "the human supply convoy hasn't arrived. They were scheduled to deliver reactor coolant and replacement parts." Kresh turned from the display. "What do you mean they haven't arrived?" "No communication, sir. No delay notifications. They simply didn't come." Kresh had commanded this base for 5 years. The human supply runs were as reliable as gravity itself. More reliable than hegemony's own logistics, if he was being honest. Contact them directly. The aide worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with confusion. Sir, I'm getting automated responses. All human supply contracts have been terminated as of today. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. At research stations where human technicians maintained delicate equipment. At communication hubs where human engineers kept the quantum entanglement arrays running smoothly. At mining colonies where human managers coordinated the complex logistics of asteroid harvesting. The humans didn't leave with fanfare or demands. They simply finished their current tasks, packed their equipment, and departed. Most left behind detailed technical manuals and system documentation, professionally organized and clearly written, as if they were ending a job contract rather than abandoning their posts. On Zephyr Prime, the capital world of the crystal beings, Chief Engineer Prexenal discovered that all 12 human technicians had left during the night shift. Their quarters were empty but clean. Their tools were gone, but their workstations were organized. They had even left behind a status report on all ongoing projects. Did they say anything? Prexenal asked the security chief. Nothing unusual. They finished their shift, filed their reports, and said they wouldn't be back tomorrow. We thought it was some kind of human holiday. Prexenal examined the reports. The humans had been maintaining the city's power distribution network for 7 years. Supposedly simple work, just checking connections and replacing worn components. But the humans had been making small modifications and improvements the whole time. The Zephyrian engineers never paid much attention to these minor changes. At the Thraxian Military Academy, Weapons Master Groktar arrived for his morning briefing to find the human technical advisors missing. These humans had been helping maintain the Academy's training systems for years. Quiet, unassuming people who kept the complex battle simulators running and the weapons ranges functional. Where did they go? Groktar demanded. They left a message, his aide replied nervously. Something about reassignment to other duties. Groktar crushed the datapad in his massive hand. Other duties? What other duties could be more important than serving the Thraxian military? The Academy's computer systems were already showing minor errors. Small glitches that the human technicians usually fixed before anyone noticed them. Word of the departures reached the Galactic Council within days. Emergency sessions were called, but the discussions were confused and disorganized. Different species reported different numbers of humans leaving, different timelines, different explanations. Ambassador Chen had not been seen since her strange refusal to help the Zephyrians 3 weeks earlier. Her office was locked, and her staff had been reassigned. The other council members assumed she had been recalled to Earth for some kind of disciplinary action. The Nebulans were the first to realize something larger was happening. Their gas-filled homeworlds depended on atmospheric processors that required constant maintenance. The human engineering teams that managed these systems had all departed within a 72-hour period. This cannot be coincidence. The Nebulan representative announced during an emergency council session. This is a coordinated withdrawal. The Christic ambassador's voice rang like breaking glass. Withdrawal from what? A few maintenance contracts? Let them go. We can train our own people to do their simple jobs. But even as they spoke, reports were coming in from across their territories. Human-operated facilities shutting down. Human-managed supply lines disrupting. Human-maintained systems beginning to show problems. The Draconian Empire, proud of their military technology and engineering prowess, dismissed the situation entirely. Humans were never essential, declared General Veximer. They performed basic support functions. Any competent engineer can replace them. His confidence lasted until the first reactor. Failure at Draconian Fleet Base Alpha. The massive fusion reactor that powered the base had been maintained by a team of 6 human engineers for the past 9 years. They had left behind their technical manuals and system documentation. But something was wrong. The Draconian engineers, who tried to take over the maintenance protocols, discovered that the humans had been making thousands of tiny adjustments over the years. Minor modifications to prevent overheating. Small changes to improve efficiency. Dozens of safety protocols that weren't in the original design. Specifications, without the humans constantly monitoring and adjusting the system. The reactor began developing instabilities that the Draconian engineers didn't know how to correct. In the council chambers, panic was beginning to set in. The scale of human involvement in galactic infrastructure was becoming clear for the first time. They hadn't just been doing maintenance work. They had been holding the entire system together through constant, invisible effort. "We need to contact Earth immediately," the Alturian representative said. "Find out what they want." But when they tried to reach the human homeworld, they discovered that all official communication channels had been closed. The quantum entanglement communicators that connected Earth to the galactic network had been shut down. The relay stations that carried human communications were empty. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from galactic civilization. The last human ship departed from Council space on a Thursday. It was a small transport vessel carrying the final group of human citizens from the Outer Rim territories. The ship's captain filed a standard departure notice with traffic control and requested clearance for jump to hyperspace. "Destination?" asked the Christic traffic controller. "Earth space," the human captain replied. "Estimated return?" There was a long pause before the answer came back. "No return scheduled." The ship jumped to hyperspace and disappeared from the sensors. The galaxy was left to discover what happens when the people who keep everything running decide to leave. The first major failure happened on a Tuesday morning at 0847 Galactic Standard Time. The Nexus communication array, which connected 17 star systems in the Council's core region, simply stopped working. Chief Communications Officer Zeltar of the Aquarian delegation was in the middle of a call with his homeworld when the connection cut out. The holographic image of his supervisor flickered and disappeared, leaving only static. Technical difficulties, he assumed, reaching for the manual controls. But when he tried to re-establish the connection, he found that the entire quantum entanglement network was failing sector by sector. On the technical level of the station, Aquarian engineers gathered around the massive communication array with growing confusion. The technology was based on quantum entanglement principles that their species had developed centuries ago. They understood the theory perfectly, but the actual hardware had been modified and maintained by humans for the past 40 years. "These circuits don't match our original designs," Engineer Fluxara said, studying the maze of connections with her water-adapted eyes. "The humans changed everything." "Changed how?" asked her supervisor. Flux "Era traced the modified pathways with a web finger. They rerouted the quantum channels through some kind of amplification matrix. And there are stabilization protocols here that aren't in any of our technical manuals. Without understanding these modifications, I don't know how to fix the failures." Within 6 hours, communication between the core worlds had dropped to 20% of normal capacity. The quantum entanglement network that made instant communication across vast distances possible was collapsing without the human modifications that kept it stable. At the same time, hyperspace navigation was becoming deadly across Alturian space. 3 cargo ships disappeared in the first day, lost in unstable jump points that materialized without warning. Captain Morgith of the Alturian Merchant Marine had been using the same hyperspace routes for 15 years. But suddenly, the navigation beacons were giving impossible readings. "The gravitational calculations are all wrong," his navigator reported. "According to these readings, we should be flying straight into a black hole, but I know this route is safe." Morgith ordered an emergency stop at the nearest space station. When he reviewed the beacon maintenance logs, he discovered that human technicians have been making constant micro-adjustments to the gravitational field generators. These tiny changes prevented dangerous resonance patterns that could tear open unstable rifts in hyperspace. The Ultrians had designed a navigation network, but they had never understood why it kept developing problems that the humans always seemed to fix. Now, without those constant adjustments, hyperspace travel was becoming a death trap. The crisis spread faster than anyone expected. On Christic colony worlds, power grids began failing as the distribution networks overloaded. The crystal beings had always been proud of their energy technology, but the human engineers had been preventing cascade failures for decades through careful load balancing and system optimization. These power distribution protocols make no sense. Chief Engineer Prexenal told his team as they studied the human documentation. "According to our original designs, this network should have collapsed years ago from feedback loops and resonance issues. But it's been working perfectly," his assistant pointed out, "because the humans were constantly making micro-adjustments to prevent the failures we never knew were happening." Prexenal realized with growing horror, without the humans managing the power flow in real time, the Christic cities began experiencing rolling blackouts as the distribution systems failed under their own design flaws. The Draconian Empire faced an even worse disaster. Their massive war fleet, the pride of their military might, was stranded as reactor after reactor suffered cascade failures. The fusion reactors that powered their enormous battleships had been maintained by human engineering teams for generations. Admiral Veximer stood in his command center watching damage reports flood in from across the fleet. "How many ships are affected?" 67% of the fleet has reactor problems, sir. The failures are spreading faster than our engineers can respond to. Them, the Draconian engineers, were discovering that their reactors had fundamental design flaws that the humans had been quietly preventing for decades. Thermal runaway conditions, magnetic field instabilities, plasma containment failures, problems that should have been obvious during the original construction, but had been masked by the humans' constant maintenance. "Why didn't we know about these problems?" Veximer demanded. "Because the humans fixed them before they became visible, sir. They were preventing the failures, not just repairing them after they happened." At Hegemony Forward Base 7, Admiral Kresh faced his own crisis. The base's supply systems were in complete chaos. Inventory tracking showed massive discrepancies. Food supplies were spoiling because the preservation systems weren't working correctly. Medical supplies were contaminated because the storage protocols were failing. "I don't understand," Kresh told his logistics officer. "These systems worked perfectly when the humans were here. That's because the humans weren't just following the standard procedures, sir. They had developed their own optimization protocols. Look at this." The logistics officer showed Kresh a comparison between the official Hegemony supply management procedures and the actual methods the humans had been using. The human system was incredibly complex, accounting for variables that the Hegemony engineers had never considered. They were managing supply flows across hundreds of worlds simultaneously, the officer explained. Predicting demand spikes, preventing bottlenecks, optimizing shipping routes in real time. The humans turned our basic supply system into something far more sophisticated than we realized. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. The scope of the crisis was becoming clear to species that had considered themselves technologically superior to humanity. The quiet, unassuming humans who had been doing simple maintenance work had actually been running the most complex and Critical systems in galactic civilization, the Nebulan homeworlds, were facing atmospheric collapse. The processors that maintained their gas-filled environments had been designed by Nebulan engineers, but modified extensively by human technicians. Without those modifications, the atmospheric balance was shifting toward toxic levels that would kill the floating cities. "We need to contact the humans immediately," the Nebulan Council declared. "Offer them whatever they want." But when they tried to reach human space, they discovered that all communication channels were completely dead. The quantum relay networks that connected to Earth and the human colonies had been systematically shut down. The humans had isolated themselves completely from galactic communication. Worse, long-range sensors were beginning to detect troubling signs from human space. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Massive construction projects in previously empty star systems. Signs of industrial activity on a scale that dwarfed anything in Council space. What are they building out there? Admiral Kresh asked his intelligence officers. "Unknown, sir. But the energy readings suggest technology far more advanced than anything we've seen from the humans before." The truth was beginning to dawn on the galactic leadership. The humans who had been quietly maintaining their infrastructure, who had been dismissed as a minor species good only for manual labor, had been operating with technology far beyond what they had revealed to the galaxy. Every simple repair had been accomplished with methods more sophisticated than the aliens' original engineering. Every basic maintenance procedure had involved calculations and optimizations that the galaxy's best scientists couldn't replicate. The humans had been hiding their true capabilities for decades, content to work behind the scenes, while the other species took credit for achievements that human ingenuity had made possible. And now they were gone, taking their knowledge and their technology with them, leaving behind a galaxy that was discovering how much it had depended on the species it had considered inferior. The first panic riots began on the third day, as civilian populations realized their worlds were slowly failing. The great civilizations of the galaxy were finding out what happens when the foundation of their society quietly walks away. By the end of the first week, panic had spread to every corner of Council space. What had started as isolated technical problems had become a cascade of failures that threatened the foundation of galactic civilization. The Galactic Council Emergency Session brought together representatives from species that could barely maintain communication with their own homeworlds. The Great Chamber, once filled with the confident voices of powerful civilizations, now echoed with fear and confusion. 23% of our fleet is offline, Admiral Kresh reported, his blue skin dim with stress. "Reactor failures are spreading faster than we can contain them. Our engineers are working around the clock, but they don't understand the human modifications well enough to prevent the cascading failures." The Christic ambassador's voice cracked like breaking glass. "Our energy grid is collapsing. 17 colonies have lost power completely. We're having to evacuate entire cities." General Veximer of the Draconian Empire stood with obvious difficulty. His proud military bearing was gone, replaced by exhaustion and growing desperation. "The humans sabotaged our systems," he declared. "This is an act of war." "No," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Dr. Kethora of the Altrian Science Council had been studying the human technical documentation for days. "They didn't sabotage anything. They simply stopped preventing our technology from failing the way it was always designed to fail." The chamber fell silent as she continued. "I've been analyzing the human modifications to our hyperspace navigation network. Every change they made was designed to prevent problems we didn't even know existed. Our original beacon design had a fundamental flaw that should have caused catastrophic failures within the first year of operation." "That's impossible," protested the Altrian engineering representative. Our navigation network has operated successfully for over a century because human technicians were making thousands of micro-adjustments every single day, Dr. Cathar replied. They weren't just maintaining our systems. They were continuously re-engineering them to compensate for our design flaws. Similar reports were coming from every species. The Aquarian communication network had been riddled with quantum resonance problems that the humans have been correcting in real time. The Nebulan atmospheric processors had been slowly poisoning their own environments until human modifications fixed the chemical balance. The Thraxian military training systems had contained programming errors that would have made them useless without constant human debugging. How could we not have noticed? The Zephyrian ambassador asked. Our best engineers worked on these systems because the humans never told us about the problems they were fixing, Dr. Kethera explained. They just quietly solved them and moved on. When our engineers reviewed the systems, they only saw the end result, not the continuous process of problem solving that kept everything working. The scope of humanity's hidden contributions was staggering. They had been running the interstellar banking system's fraud detection algorithms, preventing economic collapse. They had been managing the complex logistics networks that supplied food to billions of people across hundreds of worlds. They had been coordinating asteroid mining operations, space traffic control, and even the seemingly simple task of scheduling maintenance for space elevators and orbital platforms. We need to contact them immediately, demanded the Thraxian war chief. Offer them concessions. Give them equal representation on the council. Whatever they want. We've been trying, replied the Christic ambassador. All communication channels to human space are dead. It's like they've disappeared completely. But they hadn't disappeared. Long-range sensors were detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of human space. Industrial activity on a scale that made the Council's greatest construction projects look like small workshops. Ships moving between star systems, using propulsion methods that weren't based on any known technology. The intelligence reports were disturbing. We're detecting gravitational anomalies around several human colony systems, reported the chief sensor operator. These readings suggest technology that can manipulate space-time itself. Impossible, scoffed General Vexmer, though his voice lacked conviction. Humans don't have that kind of technology, don't they? Dr. Kethera asked quietly. We thought they were only capable of basic maintenance and logistics. But they were solving engineering problems that our best scientists couldn't even identify. What else have they been hiding from us? The first intercepted human transmission arrived 3 days later. It wasn't directed at the Council. Instead, it appeared to be internal human communication that had been accidentally picked up by a deep space monitoring station. The contents were fragmentary, but they provided a glimpse into human capabilities that shook the Council to its core. Phase 7 construction ahead of schedule. The transmission read, the dimensional shipyards are producing 12 new vessels per day. Resource extraction from parallel space continues to exceed projections. Population transfer to the Outer Rim territories is complete. Dimensional shipyards? Admiral Kresh read the report again. Parallel space? What are they talking about? Dr. Kethera was pale as she studied the transmission data. The quantum signature of this message suggests it was sent using technology that exists partially outside our normal space-time. That should be impossible, according to our understanding of physics. Unless our understanding is wrong, the Aquarian representative suggested. Or unless the humans understand things we don't. More intercepted transmissions followed over the next few days. References to multidimensional expansion, quantum engineering, protocols, and Project Exodus phase completion. It became clear that humanity's departure from Council space wasn't a reaction to recent events. It was the final stage of a long-term plan that had been in development for decades. They'd been preparing to leave us for years, realized the Nebulan representative. While we thought they were serving us, they were actually preparing for independence. The most disturbing discovery came when Council archaeologists found abandoned human facilities on several outer rim worlds. These weren't the simple maintenance stations and supply depots that the Council knew about. They were massive underground complexes filled with technology that defied explanation. "Look at this," Dr. Cathara said, studying holographic images from the excavation. "These aren't maintenance facilities. They're research laboratories. And some of this equipment appears to be testing devices for manipulating fundamental forces of physics." The archaeologists had found evidence of experiments in faster-than-light communication, gravity manipulation, and energy sources that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of thermodynamics. Equipment that could have revolutionized galactic civilization if the humans had shared it. "They were decades ahead of us," Admiral Kresh said quietly. "Maybe centuries. And we treated them like servants." The final piece of evidence came from the deepest levels of the abandoned facilities. Technical documentation written in human languages, but describing scientific principles that no Council species fully understood. Plans for technologies that seemed like science fiction, ships that could phase between dimensions, communication systems that worked faster than light, energy sources that drew power from quantum fluctuations in empty space. "This explains everything," Dr. Cathara said as she reviewed the documents. "The humans weren't just fixing our technology. They were constantly dumbing it down to our level of understanding while secretly developing far more advanced versions for themselves. They could have shared this with us," protested the Zephyrian ambassador. "We could have worked together to advance galactic civilization. Could we?" Dr. Cathara asked. "Would we have welcomed human leadership if we had known they were more advanced than us? Or would we have seen them as a threat to be eliminated?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but increasingly obvious. The great civilizations of the galaxy had built their identities on being superior to other species. The idea of accepting human leadership or even human equality had been unthinkable. And now the humans were gone, taking their advanced technology with them, leaving behind a galaxy that was slowly collapsing without their hidden support. The final intercepted transmission came on day 10 of the crisis. This one was clearly intentional, broadcast on frequencies that the Council monitoring stations would detect. Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared in holographic form, standing in what looked like a command center filled with technology beyond Council understanding. Behind her, through transparent walls, massive ships could be seen moving through space using propulsion systems that left no visible exhaust. "To the Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm and professional. "Humanity appreciates the opportunities for service that you provided over the past century. However, we have concluded that our goals and yours are no longer compatible. We are withdrawing to pursue our own development among the stars." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "You believed you knew what humans were capable of. You saw us as useful for maintenance and basic support tasks. You never asked what we were actually doing when we fixed your problems, or how we always seemed to solve issues that your best engineers couldn't understand." 6 months after the human departure, the galaxy was a shadow of its former self. The great trade networks had collapsed. Interstellar communication was sporadic at best. Entire colonies had been abandoned as their life support systems failed beyond repair. The proud civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as a minor species were struggling to maintain basic technology. The diplomatic mission to the coordinates Chun had provided took 3 months to organize. With hyperspace navigation networks failing across the galaxy, the journey to the outer rim was dangerous and slow. The delegation ship had to follow old-fashioned star charts and make multiple stops to recalibrate their position. Admiral Kresh commanded the mission. His own ship, one of the few hegemony vessels still fully operational. The delegation included representatives from every major council species. Their pride finally broken by the reality of their dependence on human expertise. Long-range sensors are detecting something, reported the ship's navigator as they approached the coordinates. Multiple artificial structures. Very large scale. Kresh studied the readings with growing amazement. The energy signatures were unlike anything he had seen before. How large are we talking about? Sir, the largest structure appears to be approximately 2,000 kilometers in diameter. It's completely spherical and appears to be rotating through dimensions somehow. What does that mean? I don't know, sir. Our sensors are detecting it in normal space. But the readings suggest it exists in at least 7 different spatial dimensions simultaneously. As they drew closer, the true scope of human construction became visible through the ship's viewports. Massive stations hung in space like artificial planets. Ships moved between them using drives that bent space itself, making the journey from one side of the system to the other in minutes rather than hours. How many people are living out here? Asked Dr. Kethera, studying her instruments. The energy consumption patterns suggest a population in the billions, her assistant replied. But sir, these installations appear to be new. Most of this construction has happened within the last 50 years. The implications were staggering. While serving as maintenance workers and logistics coordinators for the Council, humans had simultaneously been building a civilization that dwarfed anything in known space. They had been living double lives for generations, pretending to be a minor species while secretly developing technology that made Council achievements look primitive. A human ship approached to escort them to the main station. It was sleek and organic looking, more like a living creature than a mechanical vessel. As it drew alongside their ship, Kresh realized that he couldn't identify any visible propulsion system or weapons. Yet it moved with perfect precision and radiated energy signatures that his ship's computer classified as unknown but extremely powerful. Delegation vessel. This is Commander Harrison of the Human Confederation. Please follow us to Diplomatic Station 1. Director Chun is waiting to meet with you. The diplomatic station was itself larger than most council worlds. As their ship was guided into a docking bay, the delegation could see through the transparent walls into chambers that seemed to extend far beyond what the external dimensions should allow. The internal volume of this station appears to be larger than the external dimensions, Dr. Kethera reported, her voice filled with scientific confusion. That should be physically impossible, unless they've learned to manipulate space itself. Kresh replied quietly. Director Chen met them in a reception chamber that defied easy description. The walls seemed to be made of some material that showed views of distant star systems, as if they were windows rather than solid matter. The floor was perfectly transparent, revealing complex machinery. Moving in the levels below. Chun looked exactly the same as she had during her years as ambassador to the Council. But now she wore a simple uniform of deep blue material that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Behind her stood other humans wearing similar uniforms, their faces calm and professional. Welcome to Confederation space, Chun said, gesturing for the delegates to sit at a curved table that appeared to be grown rather than built. I assume you've come to discuss the current situation in Council territory. Admiral Kresh spoke for the delegation. Director Chun, our civilizations are collapsing. Without human support, our technology is failing faster than we can repair it. We need your help. Chun nodded thoughtfully. I understand your situation. We've been monitoring the Council worlds through our observation network. The infrastructure failures were predictable once human maintenance was withdrawn. You've been watching us? The Christic ambassador asked, his voice ringing with indignation. Spying on our territories? Monitoring, Chun corrected gently. We had to ensure that our withdrawal didn't cause unnecessary loss of life. When critical life support systems began failing, we arranged for emergency supplies to be delivered anonymously. Several million people across Council space are alive today because of those interventions. The delegation exchanged glances. None of them had been aware of any emergency supply deliveries. We never detected any supply runs, Dr. Cathara said. Of course not. Our delivery ships use technology that exists outside your sensor range. Chun touched a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared showing the galaxy from an external perspective. This is how we see Council space from our current position. The display showed the galactic spiral arms, but with overlaid information that revealed details the Council had never known existed. Energy flow patterns between star systems, hidden resource networks, migration patterns of spaceborne life forms, gravitational anomalies that affected hyperspace travel. You've been mapping everything, Kresh realized. For how long? We've been conducting comprehensive galaxy surveys for approximately 300 years, Chun replied. Long before we made official contact with Council species. We knew about your civilizations before you knew about us. Why did you hide your capabilities? The Ultarian representative asked. Why pretend to be less advanced than you were? Chun was quiet for a moment, looking at each delegate in turn. Because we learned from observing your species that you don't react, while to encountering civilizations more advanced than your own. Every time a Council species encounters superior technology, their first instinct is to either acquire it by force or destroy it to prevent threats to their own power. She gestured to another display that showed historical records of first contact between different Council species. Wars, conquest, technological theft, and cultural domination marked every interaction. We decided to approach you differently. Rather than reveal our capabilities and trigger defensive reactions, we chose to integrate quietly into your civilization. We provided assistance while learning about your cultures and technologies. We hoped that over time, gradual exposure to human capabilities might lead to genuine cooperation. But it didn't work, Dr. Cathara said quietly. No, after a century of service, Council species still viewed humans as useful servants rather than potential partners. The decision was made to withdraw and pursue our own development path. Admiral Kresh leaned forward. What would it take for you to return? We can offer full Council membership, equal representation, access to our territories and resources. Chun smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Admiral, what exactly would you be offering us? Failing technology that we already know how to fix? Territories that we can explore more efficiently on our own? Resources that we can extract using methods you don't understand? She activated another display showing human expansion beyond the galaxy. Star systems being colonized in neighboring galaxies. Massive construction projects that span multiple solar systems. Population centers with billions of humans living in artificial habitats that dwarfed anything the Council had ever imagined. The Human Confederation now includes territories in 17 different galaxies. We have access to resources and living space that make Council territory seem like a small neighborhood. We have technology that allows us to travel between dimensions and communicate instantly across any distance. Why would we want to return to serving as your maintenance staff? The delegation sat in stunned silence as the scope of human achievement became clear. They had been thinking of themselves as the advanced civilizations offering generous terms to a lesser species. Instead, they were representatives of struggling societies, begging for help from beings whose capabilities exceeded their understanding. However, Chung continued, humanity values its historical connections to the species we served alongside for so many years. We're prepared to establish limited trade relationships with Council species that demonstrate genuine respect and cooperation. She touched the table again, and contract terms appeared in the air. We can provide emergency technical support to prevent complete infrastructure collapse. In exchange, we expect recognition of human territorial claims, full diplomatic equality, and access to certain historical sites in Council space that have scientific interest to us. The terms were remarkably modest, considering humanity's obvious technological superiority. Chen was offering to save galactic civilization in exchange for basic diplomatic respect and some research opportunities. What happens if we refuse? Asked the Thraxian representative. Nothing dramatic,